Without further much ado, I'm handing over to Mr. Farai to kindly take us through his submission for 5 minutes. Thank you very much, everyone.
Bangani, thank you very much for organizing this important event, and thank you everyone for taking your time to participate in this discussion, which is very topical and very important for our country, Zimbabwe. So we are discussing about the issuing of exploration licenses to Zimbabwe Jokzin Coking Company, which is a Chinese company, but working in partnership with some locals in Sinamatela area in the Hwange National Park. So the question is whether this decision to allow such a project is well informed, is good for the country or not. I've also seen a letter written by the Department of Parks and Wildlife, whereby they are giving permission for exploration by this company and drilling work, but not mining. They are saying if they want to advance to mining, they should make a separate application. But the moment you allow a company to do exploration and drilling, then definitely you don't just do it for the sake of doing it, but the next stage will be mining. So this means we can be rest assured that there is going to be mining of coal in this particular area of the national park. And the question is, what does it mean to wildlife and tourism in Zimbabwe? This is an industry which generates a lot of revenue for the country. It creates jobs, thousands of jobs in the safari, transport, tourism sector. The outrage that has been caused by this decision tells it all that a lot of people and companies and communities are going to be affected by this decision. The negativity that has been also attracted because of this decision means that a lot of tourists may cancel their visits to Hwange National Park. It's part of a broader national park which also touches on Botswana. Animals roam between Zimbabwe and Botswana. So if there's going to be massive disruption of wildlife routes, migration routes and habitats on the Zimbabwean side, it simply means animals are going to roam into Botswana, where the government seems to be more serious about protecting wildlife conservancies. So let's understand that this industry needs to be protected by us. And if government shows that they prefer mining above tourism and wildlife conservation, then other countries which prefer tourism more, they are going to attract more attention from tourists than Zimbabwe. So we are saying that government must immediately stop this project. Give China, the Zhongxing company, another place, not the national park. The national park must be preserved for wildlife and the companies that are involved in conservation and tourism. I think those are my few remarks with regard to the developments in Hwange. The other issue is that there is need to consult players in the sector, the safari companies the local civil society, the local communities, and hear their views. As it stands, this sounds to be a sweetheart political deal between Zimbabwe's politicians and this company. It doesn't sound like this is something that was done through consultation with stakeholders, especially those on the ground. And the problem with sweetheart deals is that they are usually corrupt. They are usually done in violation of laid down procedures. We are also looking at the possibility that even the environmental impact assessment may not have been conducted. If it was conducted, we are also concerned whether it was done properly in terms of getting the views of all the stakeholders to be affected. But the trend that we're seeing in Zimbabwe today is that when environmental impact assessment is conducted, it's very tokenistic. They go there, they ask people to fill an attendance register, and that attendance register will be manipulated to stand for consent from the communities, which is very wrong and deceptive. So that's the challenge we have with this decision. It sounds like the decision was made at the political level, and locally the people have been left out of the decision making, and that's why there is this outcry. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Farai, for that submission. Very interesting insights indeed. And one of our panelists on this discussion is the MP for Hwange West. I'm sure he has indicated to me that he's on the platform. Honorable Godfrey Dube, I know you are on the platform. May you kindly step forward and give us your submission? 5 minutes to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I'm honorable Dube, the Godfrey, as our host has mentioned. I mean, I'm the current MP for Hwange West. I'll be short and brief. I mean, but the issue, I mean, before us here is the mining. I mean, in the national city and India leadership and the current people leadership. We were actually not consulted on this issue, of which I mean I will agree with the previous speaker. I mean I'm sure it's Farai. It comes to me and it makes me believe that this is a political deal or a political decision more than anything else. For starters, Hwange is absolutely reserved for wildlife. So for anyone to say, I mean, we're starting a coal mining in the national park, really, I mean, does it mean we have run out of coal in the coal yard and all these other Chinese the mining which we have? I mean, before we have the colliery, we have Makomo, and these other ones which don't, I mean, which just saw them over the night mining. So, I mean, to me, there's no reason to have any mining done in the national parks. We are Victoria Falls because of the national park. As the people from this region, really, why would we ask to have all the resources that we have, God given, the resources destroyed for us? So, I mean, as the leaders, we really stand with the people who are saying no to this. And as I sit here, I'm saying no to this. I'm sure all the 3 MPs coming from the side were not consulted. I'm not sure with the chiefs, but I doubt if they were consulted. I'm not sure with the villagers, but I doubt if they were consulted. Even if any environment study or assessment was done, the answer is simply no. Hwange is a national park. We need to protect our God-given resources as the people of this region. And we have not run out of coal on the current mines that we have. So this is more like of a political decision of a man who wants to pocket, to fatten, somebody's pocket generation. We cannot accept that. So, as a leader, I'm here to listen also, to agree with everyone who's saying no. Whatever school of thought you might bring, the bottom line is that is a national park, and we want to protect our animals. This is Malavo. This is where we survive as this region. So not to the mining and the national park. That's my school of thought. So whatever scientific observations you can bring up, they don't hold any substance at this moment. That's how I would start off with. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dube. One of our panelists is Honorable Molokele, the Hwange Central Member of Parliament. Honorable Molokele, the floor is yours right now. We have got 5 minutes to make your submission. Over to you, Honorable.
The most important issue about this topic today is that we have a serious crisis of democracy. I know there are sub-issues around sustainable development, around the environment, and so on, around what kind of mining do we envisage, and so on, around China's presence here in Zimbabwe. But the most important point in my view is about democracy. Demo meaning people, and kratos meaning government. A democratic government is a government that originates from the people, and it represents the people, as the great American president Abraham Lincoln once said, the democracy is a government by the people for the people. What we have in Zimbabwe today is a serious crisis of democratic governance, where we have a political establishment that has no idea what the people of Zimbabwe want, that does not care about what the people of Zimbabwe want. And this behavior that we see at Hwange National Park and also in the country, I know there was a big conference in Manicaland recently. What is the serious symptom of a government that has no respect for the people of Zimbabwe? This country belongs to all of us who live here. And according to the democratic expectation of this country, no decision that affects future generations can be made by a single person or by a present-day government without extensive consultation with all the relevant stakeholders. I am the member of parliament for Hwange Central. I only read about these developments in the social media, in the newspapers, and I have taken some time to ask other relevant stakeholders. From the DA, if you ask him, if you go to the chiefs, the traditional leaders, if you go to the civil society, if you go to the community organizations, everyone is saying they have no idea how this thing happened. And we now know that it is something that is very private, that has nothing to do with the interests of the people of Zimbabwe. It's definitely got nothing to do with people of Hwange as a district. One of the richest districts in the country are resources. But when it comes to resources, angels in Harare are going ahead in cahoots with people away from China to undermine by God. I was born and raised from the coal mine in Hwange called Hwange Colliery. I'm a product of the coal. I was born at the Colliery Hospital. I grew up and was educated by money from the in one of the biggest national parks and iconic master, not just here, not just in Africa, but it is a global park. It's a world acclaimed sanctuary. And for someone to start to do mining operations in the national park is.
It seems like Honorable Molokele is struggling with connectivity issues. Thank you very much, Honorable Molokele. I think you have made your point very clear about your position concerning this whole development of the mining activities, which are planned in the Hwange National Park. It's not only a Hwange problem, this is a global, because Hwange National Park is actually an international child, it's an international asset. With that said, let me find out, I didn't get any indication. Do we have somebody from the Ministry of Mines? Is Honorable Chitando on this platform? Or the PEMSEC, because I did invite both of them. Honorable Chitando, are you around? Honorable Chitando? Or Mr. Onismas Moyo, are you on the platform? Seems like there's nobody. We also have the chairperson of the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Mining. Are you around? If you are there, just unmute your mic and make submissions. We have 5 minutes to do that. Right, there seem to be nobody here from that department. With that said, I'm being tempted to actually invite Honorable, I wouldn't say Honorable, the former Minister of Tourism. There's Walter Mzembe here. Mr. Walter Mzembe, do you want to make your submission? Because I know you are a keen stakeholder. You have been there before. We are talking about mining, planned mining activities in the Hwange National Park. May you kindly unmute your mic and give your submission in 5 minutes. Over to you, Mr. Walter Mzembe.
Thank you very much, moderator. I accepted this Zoom open invitation, essentially because I had hoped to meet the two ministers, the Minister of Environment and Tourism and the Minister of Mines. I had hoped that they would be in this session because I was very eager to understand the rationale behind current decisions to award mining mandates or licenses to the Chinese in the Hwange National Park. My successor in the Ministry of Environment and Tourism is a very lucky man because he has been blessed with a coupling of the mandate, tourism and environment. When I was in office, I only was running singularly with tourism, but he's lucky he has got both environment and tourism. And in that context, I really wanted to understand what are the imperatives behind this decision. Is it to export coal outside Zimbabwe? Because our current demand, internal demand in Zimbabwe is about 2,200 megawatts, which can be largely satisfied out of existing optimization of current plant capacity in Zimbabwe, both hydroelectric and coal powered. But I'm aware that the Chinese are developing an additional 121 gigawatts in mainland China to add to an existing capacity of 1,000 gigawatts. And the awarding of these licenses is absolutely, in my view, nothing to do with growing internal generating capacity for Zimbabwe. I think it has a lot to do with what government may be intending to do to export actually the coal to China. Now, balance that with the desire to sustain our environment for wildlife management, it doesn't make sense. Why I'm saying that is only in 2013, we hosted the UNWTO General Assembly in the very same destination of Victoria Falls, which also includes Hwange National Park. And if you recall, around about that time, we lost 100 elephants, in fact, 120 elephants to cyanide poisoning, coinciding with the General Assembly. And leveraged that tragedy, that calamity at the time, to sponsor at the UNWTO a continental study on measuring the economic value of wildlife for African economies. And we established that tourism in Africa is largely sponsored by biodiversity to the tune of 82%, and it includes sustainable wildlife management. Now, unless if the minister, the current minister and the current cabinet are unable to assess that value within the context of tourism contributions to fiscus in Zimbabwe, and they think that they can get that out of the exploitation of coal reserves in Hwange, maybe that could be the rationale. I'm also aware that the United Nations has signposted 2040 as the cap of decommissioning all coal-powered power plants globally. Now, what I think is happening is that the government of Zimbabwe is in a race to exploit all its coal reserves between now and 2040. And in China itself, if you go to Beijing, they've decommissioned all the smoky, polluting power plants that were coal-driven. I think about 8 of them, some of which we actually wanted to hire or buy during our time to install in Zimbabwe to improve our generating capacity. So there's some kind of senseless, I think, race to exploit these coal reserves within the UN time frame and time cap of 2040, during which all coal-powered power plants would have been decommissioned in line with climate change targets that have been set globally. Now, if you recall, during our time, I had a very serious battle over Sawe Valley Conservancy, where the infamously group of 37 VVIPs and military generals had allocated to themselves and parceled Sawe Valley Conservancy 7-star asset in the southeast Lowveld. Around about the same time, while I was fighting for Sawe Valley Conservancy, we were also fighting to stop what is now happening in the Hwange National Park. This didn't start just now. This has been a running issue for the last 5-6 years. But I managed to stop the predatory behavior of colleagues around the cabinet table at the time, because the interests are usually around the cabinet table and extending, of course, to the military. As I know now and understand, some of those concessions, the 5 that have been allocated in the Hwange National Park, involve deployments from the military generals who have been seconded as shareholders in business structures. So I think we have a serious problem. I didn't want to speak today. I just wanted to come and listen and understand the trends, where things are going, so that perhaps we would start a serious lobby that speaks to government to come to their senses and save the Hwange National Park. We agreed for time immemorial, from Rhodesia to Rhodesia to Zimbabwe, that 20% of our territory, Zimbabwe, would be reserved for the resettlement and habitation of wildlife. This desecration of Hwange National Park naturally cuts into that 20%, and I hope and I pray that this is not rampant elsewhere in the country. Otherwise, we can almost kiss goodbye our wildlife and biodiversity heritage. So at this juncture, I think I'll stop and listen into conversation from other people. But I'm really keen to drive an international campaign against this. I'm still very much in touch with the world, and we can drive and stop or at least make the government of Zimbabwe act sensibly to preserve the Hwange National Park. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walter Mzembi, for that, for those insights. Colleagues, we have about under 1 minute before our session times off, and I'll ask you to join immediately when this session times off, and then we can continue with our discussion because we are not yet done. Honorable Mzembi, what Honorable Mzembi just directed us to is what we want to really focus. Having heard this, the question perhaps is, how do we stop this process from going forward? Because we are pretty much aware that it's going to have a serious impact, not only now, but even in future generation. How do we put a stop to this activity that are going on right now so that we can keep our Hwange National Park as clean as possible without any contamination? There's somebody from Ministry of Mines, kindly step forward. You've got 5 minutes to give us a submission. All right. We have got Honorable Sansole, who is joining us now. I think I'll also give him his 5 minutes. We had actually pushed for his presence. He's actually busy joining right now. Honorable Sansole, before you go very far, before you even go very far, I would like you to step forward and give us your submission concerning this new mining activity taking place in Hwange National Park, or the proposed mining activity going on in Hwange. Honorable Sansole, you have 5 minutes, please step forward.
Thank you. I just want to make reference to your opening remarks, Farai, where you asked 2 questions: whether this decision was well informed, and secondly, is it good for the country? And I think the answer to both questions is no. The decision could not have been well informed because what comes to mind is the question, is coal not available in other parts of the country other than the national park? You know, we know that coal is available in abundance in other parts of Zimbabwe, in areas that are not national parks. And is it good for the country? No, it cannot have been good for the country, especially in view of the fact that no consultations were done. We've seen what the Chinese have done in extracting resources and doing very little for the local communities, very little in terms of developing the area from which they derive benefit. They've done actually more harm than good, especially in the Hwange district, where they've carried out their mining activities and left the area damaged in terms of pollution, in terms of damage to the roads. The rivers have been damaged, like Deka River has been damaged, which as a result of mining activities by the Chinese. So obviously issues to do with pollution, issues to do with poaching were not taken into account. Issues to do with the movement of heavy vehicles. A lot of traffic is likely to be moving around in the park, moving coal. So looking at that, that does not bring any benefit to the community. So I personally would want to agree with the submissions by my colleagues, Honorable Dube and Honorable Molekele, in that this decision to award the special grants to Afro-Shin and Zimbabwe Zongjing was not well informed. It's not of any benefit. It's unfortunate, though, that the Minister of Mines has not accepted the invitation to be on in this meeting, because if he had, I think he would have benefited from the submission by the former minister of tourism. And also the current Minister of Environment and Tourism should have also been accepted, should have accepted the invitation so that both of them would help us come up with the resolutions that are actually binding on government. That would be my submission. Unfortunately, I've been offline for some time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Sansole, for those very for that wonderful submission. Anybody from Zimpax? Today we have got a very big audience. We have never seen something like this, ladies and gentlemen. Usually our Zoom sessions are are somewhere between 15 and 20, but today we really broke the record because I think at one time our numbers went up to 80. It's a historic moment, and it just tells us that, you know what, this is a very serious issue. All right. Do we have the DA here? Because I also invited the DA. DA, Mr. Mleya, are you here? Mr. Mleya? Anybody from Environmental Africa in Victoria Falls? Because we did also extend their invitation to their office to come and attend and make a submission.
Yeah, Speaker, sorry, maybe my mic is giving me problems. I'm from the Zimbabwe Environmental Law Association.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Yes, you have 5 minutes to make your submission. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So as Zimbabwe Environmental Law Association, we are seeing the development and looking at the programming that we do as Zimbabwe Environmental Law Association within wildlife management and even climate change and energy governance. From the conversations that I've had being discussed within here, I think this is really an issue of concern, and also considering that Hwange and the value, as the other speakers were saying, that the value that wildlife has on the nation, and also the concerns, especially looking at coal and our commitments that we have in Zimbabwe towards climate change mitigation, especially looking this year, Zimbabwe, we are revising our nationally determined contributions, and considering that coal is a greenhouse gas that we should be leaking. So at the end of the day, we are also concerned about this issue, and we are looking at the development so that we really understand the concerns. I would also like to what the former minister was saying in terms of had we had the two ministers, so that we can have a clear position and the understanding of what the plan is, actually what the plan is. So from that point, and maybe also interestingly, because if you look at the COP25 last year, there was that submission that African countries are considering that in coming years we are going to be having stranded assets, and coal is part of the asset that can be stranded. Maybe the push again from the government is because they want to expropriate that resource before it is stranded. But the concern now is, do we consult communities that are within those areas? And at the end of the day, also, if you look at coal in Zimbabwe, the communities in areas where they are rich in coal and any other mineral, they are not benefiting at all. So we really want to understand the position. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roderick, for that submission. They seem to be trying to catch up with time, but the big question is it necessary? Is it really sustainable? Does it matter for Hwange as a community? Does it matter for Zimbabwe as a country? And does it really matter for us as a global player? Because like what other presenters made, that submission that they made, tourism is an international industry. When people are booking their packages, Hwange is always on the package. Does it mean we have to lose that package, the billion-dollar industry, not only in our generation, but even for future generations to come? Right. That said, I'm quickly thinking right now, perhaps we should ask our panelists again to say, what do we do right now? What is the best way forward? How do we make sure that government sits up and listen? Honorable Molokele is here, Honorable Sansole is here, Honorable Dube is also here. How do we get it? How do we get this message to government? What do we do? As a community, as a country, and an international community, what do we do? Use. And of course, I'm aware the ministers were not here, but I'm recording this discussion. I am going to forward it to them, definitely. I will definitely forward it to them. I can assure you on that one. Yes, so what do we do? What is the best way forward?
Okay, thank you, Bangani, and thank you, the panelists who have made presentations. I think some of the suggestions have already started coming through. Honorable Mzembi talked about an international campaign. When we talk about Hwange as a national park, it's an international asset. I think we need to involve international bodies as well. The UN, I think there is the UN Tourism Authority, I can't remember the real name, but they all need to be brought on board in this thing so that they help us to protect this national and international asset. We have 3 honorable members of parliament here, Honorable Sansole, Honorable Molokele, and I'm forgetting the third name. But we also need a parliamentary process to address this problem. They can maybe raise a motion in parliament. I don't really know, but they know better how they can take such an issue to parliament. And possibly the ministers whom we could not have on this call, which is quite a shame, can be reached out in parliament or asked to come and answer these questions in parliament. There's also the legal route. I am now taking this from the call that was hosted about 2-3 days ago by the Tourism Association, and there's need for an interdict, a court interdict, to stop this process. We all agree that there was no consultation that was done. There was no proper environmental impact assessment, which is a violation of the Zimbabwean law. If any foreign company wants to come and invest in this country, as what happens the world over, they need to respect the laws of Zimbabwe. They need to respect the policies of Zimbabwe. They need to respect the stakeholders, the local communities. This culture that is cultivated with a politician or a community into a conservancy and start doing their work has to stop. So we need an interdict, a legal process. And finally, we also need to generate a petition. You know, it can be an online petition. There are a lot of people around the world who are passionate, and also a lot of groups make sure that we take it to the responsible ministers and government departments like the Department of National Parks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Farai, for that submission. Anybody from the honorable members of parliament, anything from Mr. Walter Mzembi? What do we do from now? Yes, there is this issue about the international lobbying, the parliamentary processes, the legal route of a court interdict. And I'm also thinking, what can we do to talk to the Chinese president, for example, because these are his people, these are his investors, the so-called investors are coming from China, right? what do we do to talk to the Chinese president and tell him, please, hands off our national parks? And like what Mr. Farai said, you know, China must also respect other people's laws. If you go to China and you are found with a rhino horn in one of their national parks, you come back home as a body bag of some plastic bag and so on. How do we talk to the Chinese president, for example, and tell him, comrade or Mr. President, can you please talk to your investors? We need peace and stability in our regions, for example. Okay, over to you. I can see Mr. Mzembi's, my mic is unmuted. Please go ahead. Peterson, I see you. I'll get to you, Shepard. I'll get back to you. Yes, I recognize you, but let's give Mr. Mzembi the floor. Yes, go ahead, please.
There are 3 or 4 plans of intervention or interfaces that we can exploit. First is the local action, which has been, I think, summarized by Farai, starting with identifying the communities. Community action, community class action is super critical, because this is a governance issue that involves communities inside Hwange National Park itself. So those are the drivers of any perceived local action which can grow into regional, going forward to international. So I think you need the leadership of the honorable members of the Hwange community, and I'm happy they are participating, although some of them are being cut off because of network challenges. But the fact that they are actually in this conversation is actually very encouraging. So they will carry a parliamentary petition on behalf of communities, first to Parliament, secondly to government, but even more importantly, the Hwange National Park is not an asset that just belongs to Zimbabwe anymore. If you recall, it's a transboundary conservation area under the Kavango Zambezi conservation area, what we commonly refer to as CASA. And it involves, at regional level, Namibia, Botswana, Angola, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. And I'm absolutely certain that there's not been sufficient consultations within the context of CASA itself to say that Hwange is going the route of full-scale mining to the other partners within the CASA TFCA. The CASA TFCA is funders. I recall very clearly KfW in Germany and others have pumped in a lot of money into CASA. And they didn't pump it in to do mining. They pumped it in for sustainable biodiversity management, creating a habitat for wildlife, flora and fauna, and a collaborative governance system that involved communities. So I'm sure very clearly that they are also naturally very alarmed. So it's one angle that you can exploit with your petitions. The social media campaign is also very effective. I've noticed that the government, while it may appear like it is not paying attention to social media, they are very active and they take notice of that. So if you can't get your response through formal channels, parliament, through the line ministries that are collapsed into one, that is environment and tourism, going to mines, which is actually the one encroaching onto Hwange National Park, you need to do a presidential petition. Make sure that you escalate it to the president himself, although he's the one who has been signing these special grants. You need to target the Chinese president in this instance, because these are his people, these are his investors, and he needs to understand the feelings and sentiments of communities of Hwange and the people of Zimbabwe, that it cannot be a reckless exploitation of a biodiversity enclave that is classified. You may not know this. The CASA, within which Hwange National Park sits, is the world's largest wildlife enclave. So you are desecrating something that has already been branded and classed as #1 wildlife asset in the world. And that action is coming from Zimbabwe, and it's irresponsible. It's irresponsible to the extent that it is weighing down the branding efforts of Namibia, Botswana, Angola, and Zambia. So you can also reach out to the respective authorities of those countries to say you are in trouble and you need their collective assistance to highlight this issue to the president of Zimbabwe and his government to balance their economic interests against biodiversity interests. There is sufficient traction and action in the international community through wildlife agencies and NGOs. Those can also be targeted through, I think, more effectively through the social media campaign. But the communities must highlight their plight. I left tourism in 2017. We had secured something like $100,000 for a project that was meant to highlight the plight of life in the Hwange National Park. I don't know whether that money after the coup was drawn down or not, but there's a $100,000 parcel sitting inside the UNWTO, which was meant to be a legacy contribution after we successfully hosted the General Assembly. So they put this money in the kitty for Hwange National Park, the Cholosho side of it. That money, we can still reach out and ask for that parcel to begin to really make sure that it highlights the plight of wildlife, because we're putting it to reinforce the economic value of wildlife in Zimbabwe. We're actually migrating from consumptive tourism to non-consumptive, which is wildlife watching. So as you get all these deaths of elephants, I understand that the latest one has been 22 elephants or something. Don't sit on that information. You must highlight what is happening, because it is clearly linked to condemnation of pastures from which the elephants are feeding on. The results or initial results or pronouncements that have been made by government itself suggest that those 22 elephants may have grazed contaminated grass or poisonous grass, and the bacterial infection, I think it's manufactured, the information, but it's clearly coming out of spillage from mining activities. Farai knows that. It's coming from that angle. The traditional chiefs are also very super critical in leading the communities. So you have to make sure that your traditional chiefs are on board, because they can stand their own clout, which can withstand political pressure from central government. So you need to bring them on board, make sure that they understand what the fight is all about. They should not be excited about tar roads in a national game park. We don't need tar roads in a national game park. We need actually gravel roads, because everything must look as natural as possible. So there shouldn't be all this excitement. And they must understand that the exploitation of this resource will be very limited, just 30 years, beyond which there won't be any coal mining activity, because the coal power plants would have been decommissioned. So they would have lost wildlife to an opportunity cost that is just equivalent to 30 years. So the messaging, the packaging of this issue must touch all the issues and make sure that you lead, you secure the leadership of chiefs for their communities into government, into parliament, into the region, into the international community. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zembi, for that insight. I'm sure we are going to do a lot of follow-ups from your presentation, because you are giving us a lot of in-depth discussion. Someone is asking.
And by the way,
yes,
there are cabinet resolutions, and this is why I'd only come to ask Mangaliso and Winston Chitando, that are they revising cabinet resolutions around One, they need to set aside 20% of our territory in Zimbabwe for national park activities, which include Hwange Game Reserve. Secondly, resolutions that were done as an extension of a fight that we won over Save Valley Conservancy, which Mnangagwa himself today is patron of Save Valley Conservancy. And I thought he had understood the sound modeling of the conservancy to the extent that Save itself in Masvingo is not being desecrated in a similar manner because he's patroning it. I know what is happening there. Although there are encroachments from the 37 beneficiaries who were parceled out some of the land. You also hear debate about compensation to former white farmers. It relates to some of these assets which we had agreed in cabinet that they were not going to be touched, either covered by BIPA or reserved for wildlife resettlement. So I can't quite reconcile the contradictions that are being communicated by this latest action from Hwange, because it is covered by cabinet resolutions, unless if they have revised all that in cabinet and they've decided to go for full-blown and full-scale mining to the detriment of biodiversity. So that's why I wanted to see and ask these cabinet ministers that have you revised our resolutions in the past regarding this matter? It was a contentious matter. You can Google it. You will see my fights with the environment ministers of the time, Sevia Gasukwere, Francis Nema, Opam Chinguri, what's her name? This one who succeeded me, the old lady from Mashonaland West, Maim Fumira. All of them, I had fights with them because I had a singular mandate for managing tourism. They had environment, and their actions in environment kept on disempowering tourism. And this is why I said Mangaliso is a very lucky man. He is a coupling of the mandate, both environment and tourism, and he should be able to deal with this issue under one roof.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mzembi, once again. With that said, I also want to check now. I see there's a couple of hands up, and we are running a few minutes into our second round before it elapses. But I also ask our participants that normally we hold long running discussions. We don't mind actually putting yet another final session once this session times off so that we can wrap up all these issues. But we know one thing for sure, we cannot exhaust all these issues today, but at least we do have some kind of direction as to where we are and how we should look into the future to face this kind of situation. Right. I'd asked if there is somebody from the honorable members. I think Honorable Molokele indicated he wanted to say something. Honorable Molokele, do you want to say something? Just 3 minutes, and then we move to other participants. Honorable, are you on?
Yes, Mr. Dube.
Yes, please go ahead, Honorable.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Dube, and thank you to everyone else who's been participating in this session so far, including the former cabinet minister. I think the way forward is obvious that we need to avoid repeating the mistake that has been done by the government of the day of ignoring the local stakeholders. And the first step is to come up with a coordinated approach in terms of making sure that all the stakeholders are clearly consulted and mobilized, and also there is clear awareness in terms of the issues and the implications. So as part of that process, I'm hoping that the other two MPs for the district, maybe later this week, we should be able to meet on the outskirts of parliamentary proceedings and start to discuss the practical nitty-gritties, because that's a skill that I have as a former civil society leader. But we could sit down with Honorable Sansole and Dube just to do a stakeholder mapping and alignment later this week, and just see who we could reach out to do the coordination and so on. But in Hwange, we need all the relevant stakeholders to be mobilized into one movement. And then by so doing, that's when we will allow ourselves to have an opportunity to move forward in terms of issues such as social media campaigns, where possible, site visits to protest or demonstrate, and also to develop petitions. We need petitions that are different, like a petition to the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee for mining to engage the chairperson. And I think the MPs themselves can also try to meet with the chairperson on the sidelines of Parliament of the mining Portfolio Committee on mining. Also to have a petition towards the Minister of Mines or the Minister of Mines itself, a petition towards the Chinese government represented by the Chinese embassy here in Harare. We could have a direct petition to the minister, to the Chinese ambassador, and that can be handed over by representatives of the community, including the parliamentarians. We could also work with the civil society. We've got Mr. Mago here and his organization, but we've also got Zimbabwe Environmental Lawyers Association, we've got Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights, and many other similar types of organizations that have an interest in this matter. We should have a round table discussion around how the civil society can support the local communities. In Hwange especially, we want the community-based organization to come aboard. We could have a legal process around that, especially an interdict of some sort to stop the mining operations until these concerns about sustainable development and environmental issues are resolved. Also to engage the international community, the embassies that may have interests, especially also the United Nations itself, the relevant parts of the UN, which are interested in natural heritage issues, and also the international organizations around tourism. I know that they've got their own organizations. I know the former cabinet minister once campaigned to be a sort of a secretary general of one of them, a tourism organization. So we need to reach out to them and petition them and try to see how we can work with them. But for me, I think the most important guiding principle is that we need to make sure that there's local stakeholder mapping and local stakeholder alignment so that the entire district is well organized from Hwange East to Hwange West to Hwange Central. All the relevant stakeholders and the communities are involved, and traditional leaders and so on. But I think the common position, as far as I see, is that we need to say no to whatever is happening right now. We need to unite and say enough is enough. And those are my submissions for now.
Thank you very much, Honorable Molokele. I see Roderick, one of our panelists, they have their hand up. Roderick, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I will be so quick. I've seen concerns even on the chat with regards to Zela. I would want to submit that the Zimbabwe Environmental Law Association has a litigation department, and it is in the process of preparing an urgent chamber application to stop the developments. Mostly our argument is based on the aspect that the environmental impact assessment was not conducted, henceforth the action is unprocedural. So we also have got some cases that we are citing to support our argument. For example, the Monale Valley wetlands case and other issues, and the litigation department has been in touch with some of the communities. So that issue of lack of the environmental impact assessment certificate as part of the documents when the grant was, special grant was being given. So on the litigation and legal side already, something is being developed with other stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moyo. That sounds very encouraging and heartwarming to hear such kind of interventions. This is a serious issue that needs all of us to stand up even on our toes to make sure that we protect our treasured asset called Hwange National Park. and perhaps all the other assets that we have countrywide, because they belong to us. Zimbabwe is for all of us, not for all of us, but even our future generations. With that said, let me ask Peterson. I see his hand is up.
Yeah, thank you, Spangan, for the floor. My perception is going to be very divergent and different from most of you. Since this issue of a reserving area for economic activity started, be it mining or national parks, we've got a third interested party that no one has been paying attention to. These are the people that were resettled from the national parks into the area where the colliery established, and then from that area, when people set up Hwange colliery into the rocky areas of Simangan, there's a good number, a population that is interested in this whole matter of whether mining now or in the future, or reserving or continue to reserving land for wildlife. As it is, Hwange is under siege, be it in the national parks or in the communal areas. There are mines coming up everywhere. So what we're thinking, there's a huge disconnect between the local community and the decision makers up there. And possibly, if you look at the chain of representation that we're having, no one seems to be having at the back of their mind the interests of the people. We have an area measuring about 14,600 square kilometers reserved for wildlife. And we have people living in mountainous areas. By the way, 14,600 square kilometers is equivalent to the area of Belgium, a country. That Zimbabwe is set aside for wildlife, at the expense of people that are in the periphery of that area, who were occupying that area, which we call our wildlife now, our wildlife protected area now. Much as I may not condone the mining at international picnic sites like Masuma and the Tema dams, that one is a serious issue, even from my desk. But my major point is, the population of Hwange is growing. We need more land, not for mining, but for resettlement. This is my major point. May we also think about the people that are in Hwange as we think about protecting the national parks and national parks area. There's too much land that is reserved for wildlife in Zimbabwe. What do we do with 85,000 heads of elephants in Zimbabwe? CITES has got a hand in this matter. There is no trade in ivory authorized now. The people that are being murdered by this wildlife in Hwange. Strictly speaking, we need more land. We need to move into the national parks and accommodate people. I know I'll disappoint a lot of people, including some that I've got here. But the point is, we are focusing too much on money and very little on people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peterson, for that submission. We'll perhaps look at some of those issues as we go along with our discussion. We may not get the answers right now, but what you just mentioned is something that I'm pretty much concerned about from a very personal perspective. But I think we can actually delve deeper into that going forward. Let me invite a couple of people from the floor. If anyone has a question, comment, or you can show up by raising your hand. Yes.
My name is Kaitano Dube.
Yes.
From Value University of Technology. Now, I've conducted, I think, extensive research, particularly on tourism and climate change, especially in the Hwange, Victoria Falls, and Kariba. So I just wanted to make a comment to say we are all concerned, I think, about the developments that we are seeing. But I think the issues that has to do with tourism, biodiversity, they are much a human issue and not necessarily an economic issue, I think, like would want everyone to believe. So the ecosystem services that are provided by national parks such as Hwange pretty much talks to human needs. So I just wanted to comment in light of, I think, the comments that are coming from Peterson, to say that the issue is not necessarily about the economy. It's not necessarily about the rand or the cent or the US dollar, but it's about our heritage. The wildlife that we have is our heritage and we need to protect it. I think that's the principal thing that we need to recognize. So it's not about tourism first, it's not about coal mining, but it's about our heritage, it's about the ecosystem services that we derive from national parks such as Hwange. And I think we need to jealously guard that for ourselves, and I think for our children. And we have got, I think under SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, we have got goals that are actually talking to issues that has to do with biodiversity. And we are losing a lot of biodiversity loss. But what we are seeing, if you look at the trend, we are seeing where in countries where you have a lot of biodiversity loss, you also have a preceding reduction in the quality of life, and also increasing poverty and also inequality. So I just wanted to make that one quick comment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kaitano. Kalile, your hand is up. Please unmute your mic and share with us your contribution.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question and a suggestion for follow-up. My question is directed at former Minister Mzembe. Could you please clarify what the point that you raised about how Zimbabwe has set aside 20% of its land? How exactly does that work? Please come again on that point. I didn't quite understand it. And I think that will be important in whatever follow-up measures we come up with, both, especially from a legal or constitutional point of view. If this land or 20% of this land has been set aside and the issuing of this mining rights violates that, then we've got, it strengthens the legal case against this move. And then my second comment or point for follow-up would be, do we know a lot about these two mining companies? I think one angle would be to look at these companies and their performance, if they've been operating in Zimbabwe or other countries. What is their record? What is their precedence in terms of how they manage their mining operations? It could lend further weight to our case against the issuing of these permits to these particular companies. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Kalile. George has a hand up. George, can you please mute your mic and make your comment or submission? Please go ahead, George.
Oh, thank you, Swangani. Oh, okay, my question really, I don't know whether Honorable Mzembe will be in a position to assist really. My questions are based on the decision really in terms of giving out this concession or granting this concession to mine in places such as Hwange, whether, I mean, at this moment we are seeing some kind of pressure, if I may use that word, well, because really if the government is that considerate and the government is sat down and thought about this, does that mean that there's kind of a pressure whereby these new miners, they identify the place or to mine and then present it to the government and say, we want this, or the government give the, because if indeed it's the government that grant that kind of concession, really in terms of thinking, I mean, the president has been in the government for this long, and and he is, I think he's the person who knows what is Hwange is all about, and the national park in Hwange, and so for the benefit of the local, the benefit of the country, really just to come up and just wake up and say, okay, no, okay, we are giving these Chinese the green light to mine in such area, and also taking away the jewel, the treasure that Hwange has. Now that brings me to the point of, I think there have been some, I'm sure Honorable Mzembe was still the minister at that point, whereby there were in the news articles whereby animals were being exported clandestinely or secretly to China, elephants and so forth from Hwange. That has been an issue. I think it was Honorable Sebia Kaswere who was the minister at that point. I do apologize, Honorable Mzembe. So there were issues when actually the previous government were still there, in terms of, was it the preparation of the Chinese coming in so that it kind of reduce the animals in the wildlife in that area so that they can mine. I think there's a lot of question that beg debts to the previous government as well, the activities taking place. So I think that needs clarification and or an unpicking to understand the motive, whether there's a long-term planning to make sure that Hwange is no longer the center of wildlife or national parks or something like that. That's my submission, Hwange, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. George. Today, Mr. Mzembe, you are like the minister. I'm not sure what you're going to do. It looks like you've been put on the spotlight. I think you have heard the two questions which are directed at you. You are an insider, and I want to believe that you have been invested on our behalf, perhaps, to answer some of these questions for us. May you kindly unmute your mic, Mr. Mzembe, and share your views about what the two participants have just said. Thank you. And maybe perhaps you can also touch a bit on what Peterson asked about, moving into the national parks and. All right. The floor is yours, Honorable. Mr. Mzembe.
Well, I don't want to answer on behalf of the current government. I'm sure you'll be able to, with a lot of pressure and lobbying and advocacy, you will be able to bring them to successor sessions to this one. But I want to start by saying that the 20% threshold was actually government policy. It is, to the best of my knowledge, even when I was given the mandate to administer the Tourism Act, that's what I was told, that is 20%, and that has been the reigning philosophy, that 20% of our land is reserved for wildlife resettlement and habitation. And is land in natural regions 4 and 5, to the best of my knowledge. It is land that was considered to be unproductive for agricultural purposes initially, and fenced off to support the wildlife habitation. So it is not in conflict with agricultural activity. I had Peterson trying to advance a case for resettlement of people in wildlife areas. It is already part of the policy. Campfire was born out of that. Areas bordering wildlife areas were integrated into wildlife management, and that's what gave birth to Campfire. Unfortunately, it was a program that was mismanaged largely by local councils who were not passing back money to communities for their sustenance. But if it's followed religiously, it is a model that works, and it has been exported as far as Kenya, Tanzania. All those success models up north are actually birthed out of Campfire, the success of the initial Campfire program. The rationality behind it is that if you agree that you are passing 50% to communities, you must pass back that money to communities for their sustenance. And it's possible also for communities in a collaborative governance model to subsist with wildlife or in wildlife areas sufficiently enough to accommodate all those people that our brother was highlighting could be facing problems in terms of resettlement. So the 20% does not strictly restrict itself to wildlife. It's wildlife with human shepherding of the wildlife. And I think it's consistent with even biblical philosophies and principles of dominion over the fish, of the seas and rivers, the birds of the air, and your terrestrial animals. The man has always been the shepherd of all those wildlife heritage, but it must be done in a sustainable manner. The hunting permitted to the extent that it can support communities where they are shepherds of that wildlife. That was my understanding. And when we supported the program, when we were doing our wildlife study in the Hwange area, it was on that principle that we must find a way of integrating human settlement inside the park in safe zones, but as stewards, as wildlife stewards, not as competing interests. You can't start doing massive maize programs or winter wheat in a game park. They tried it in the Save Valley Conservancy. It didn't work. And the Germans, I think, intervened eventually. EU intervened, and they started pumping money to push communities into communal irrigation schemes that they were building for them. As they relocate them from gaming areas, they were also simultaneously supporting the development of communal irrigation schemes. And I think we must make a case for that as we look at Hwange National Park. What was the other question?
I think it was coming from George, who was asking perhaps the rationality of granting this concession, dating back to perhaps your experience. It has been said that elephants were being shipped to China clandestinely and all those things. Was it perhaps not a sort of a preparatory ground to sort of remove all the elephants so that mining activities can take place unhindered?
That has always been a contentious subject. And I keep on talking about how lucky Mangaliso has been to have a mandate of both environment and tourism. From the tourism perspective, the drift was already away from consumptive tourism, which is hunting, to non-consumptive, which is wildlife watching, and export of wildlife. During my time, I remember trips to as far as Togo, Nigeria, Benin, markets for wildlife exports had already been opened up. DRC, not essentially hunting, but exporting wildlife. It was more lucrative because time and again you have to cow in order to optimize habitation management. So the value that we're then assessing at the time was wildlife watching and export, because Africa in itself, as huge as it is, accommodating the entire, almost half the world, you can fit it into Africa, China, United States, Europe, and so forth. It's a huge habitat, a huge natural habitat for wildlife management. But there are countries that no longer have wildlife populations. The whole of West Africa, they don't have the kind of species that we have in Zimbabwe. They are fascinated by lions. They don't have them. They were coming to us during our time in government asking for export quotas on wildlife. So it's a lucrative area that can be pursued. Translocations, even within the region, into Mozambique, which depleted a lot of its wildlife, has been an ongoing exercise, even into Kruger and others. And this is what gave birth to the concept of TFCAs, because wildlife knows no boundaries. You can see their migrations up north in Tanzania and Kenya. They don't know any boundaries. They've got natural migration patterns, and you have to expand their habitat by collapsing our human borders. And that was the basis of CASA, the basis of the Gonarejo Limpopo Transfrontier Park, and 5 others around Zimbabwe, to create a large habitat for freedom of movement of the animals. And it doesn't negate human beings because they are integrated as stewards inside those parks, or whether they're transfrontiers or national game parks. And I think the solution going forward is to really revisit the campfire model and implement it as was originally envisaged. It worked, and it still works, but councils must pass back the earnings and revenue, whether from hunting or from wildlife watching or from wildlife exports, back to communities for their sustenance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mzembi, for your interventions. I'm not sure if there's any comment or questions from anyone on the floor. You can do that by raising your hand or unmuting your mic, because some people have. Peterson, let me see if there's somebody else. I know you are really burning to say something. But let's see, is there somebody else? I'll get back to you, Peterson. I'll definitely give you a chance. Anybody else? Anybody? Anybody from Zimpax? Because we had invited people from Zimpax. We had invited people from the Ministry of Mines to come through and share with us their concern, their submissions. Anybody, please, from those respective organizations? Right, we are dealing with the issue which has been, which has taken us by surprise. In any case, in Hwange, we are not new to surprises. The other week, we had a discussion on the Batoka Gorge, the announcement of the SI on the removal of the people, and all of a sudden, there was all these challenges and questions and so on. And unfortunately, most of the time, we don't really get the buy-in from our local leaders, guys from the HRDC, Victoria Falls Town Council, the DA, despite being invited, unfortunately, they don't feature. The traditional chiefs, I had a very shocking answer yesterday from one of the traditional chiefs when I told them we'll be having a Zoom meeting concerning this area. But nonetheless, we care for Hwange, we care for our country, and we want the best out of Hwange. Anybody with a question other than Peterson? I didn't see any comment.
Just in addition, Swangani,
yes.
Your audience,
yes,
they also have to be aware that I don't know whether it has been revised by this new dispensation, but during my time, I succeeded in integrating Hwange National Park, going back down to Bulawayo, back Hwange to Victoria Falls to Binga, as a special economic zone corridor for tourism. So Matabeleland should not lose its head start or leadership in that respect, because we had granted that SEZ intention or status, starting from, I think it was Dete or somewhere, to Hwange, Victoria Falls, to Binga, and SEZ for tourism. And if they've revised that now to, as is seemingly the case, to exploit coal short-term in the next 20, 30 years, it is the vision. And I'm answering what somebody had asked, that this thing started during our time. Yes, it did start during our time, but you need a beast of a minister of tourism in order to defend your territory against the predatory behavior of other sector ministries, that they will always come with superior computations that will earn more money from mining than your tourism. And I used to get a lot of derision around the cabinet table. People fighting to say, no, look, we don't live on animals. We want to mine and make money now. And I think that is the sense that I get, that the tourism minister has been overwhelmed by his colleagues who will be talking about energy generation. But I've just presented a preamble to you to say that even if Zimbabwe, it's $100 billion US economy in the future, has to be supported by upgraded energy power generation, let's say 10,000 megawatts, we still have enough that does not justify the desecration of Hwange National Park. Outside Hwange National Park, we have hydroelectric potential of immense proportion. We have solar power generation opportunities of immense proportion that do not necessarily invite the complementing of supply from mining Hwange National Park. So it's up to you as Hwange community to really fight for your heritage. Zimbabweans will support you because I'm sure this action is happening simultaneously in other wildlife areas. But you have to show leadership as communities to fight for your own heritage. You have to put up the fight.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mzembe, for that intervention. I don't see anybody who is actually raising an issue, but I have a comment here which says we urgently need an investment consultative forum made of local people with serious local interest to serve as a gatekeeper for all investors, a forum that will sign agreements with investors to guarantee attention to the interests of the local community. We are having mines and mining-related enterprises all over Hwange, and there is little evidence that the interests of the local communities are being taken care of. Another comment says, Zim is on a highway to recovery following a special economic zone model. I think that's what Mr. Mzembe was talking about. It is common knowledge that the special economic zone approach does not offer a lot of luxuries, but let not annihilate the livelihoods of a local community. That's comment from somebody on the platform. Peterson's hand is up again. Peterson, can you kindly unmute your mic and share with us your views?
Thank you, Sibangani, for reading out those comments. Thank you. Special economic zones are meant to jet boat, that means riding in very high speed, an economy from the doldrums to a desired position. So Zimbabwe is in that condition where we are jet boating from a difficult economic situation. So a lot of laws will be relaxed. We were told beforehand that this is going to happen. So we see a lot of laws being relaxed, a lot of things happening. But what is worrying us the most is that, yes, we might say the new dispensation is doing this, but let's all try to understand why the new dispensation is doing this. What kind of support does it need in order for it to do things right, in order for it to run a sustainable economy? Here, amongst us here, we are not very keen on being honest, or we're very economic with the truth. We need to support the government of the day so that they deliver us to the promised land. But if we put elephants on the roads and then expect the government to be nice to the situation when we're making the situation difficult ourselves, it's going to be a very complex situation. Let's be honest with each other here. And also, let's not run away from the fact that these things that are happening in an area where there are people. I'll insist, happening in an area where there are people and the interests are bound to be different. Truly, others are interested in money, others are interested in the livelihoods of the people. But yeah, I hear former Minister Mzembe when he says he wants 20% for wildlife. But look here, what are we going to do with all that area for wildlife? Campfire has been tried in Zimbabwe, but it hasn't been such a successful program, beautiful as it may appear on paper. But the truth is, there is no respect for human life. There is more respect for wildlife than there is for human life. And that is an issue.
I've always said that Zimbabweans are very nice people. We have seen in some countries, if you don't pay people their SMTs, they come with their camping chairs and their blankets and beds and sleep in the boardrooms until the money is paid. But Zimbabweans are so nice. The national park is going and we still go back and sleep for 8 hours. I think we need to change our attitude. I have seen in some countries, war veterans, they literally bring their whole bedrooms and sleep in front of the Minister of Justice office until they get their compensations. Guys, we are too nice. There's something we need to change as a nation and as a community of Hwange. Simba, the floor is yours, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Dube. So I was reading from The Guardian some 2 days ago, and they mentioned that there's one trust, I think it's called Bejani Trust, that came across a Chinese team drilling for coal, without prior consultation. in the park. So I'm just not sure if our members of parliament that are here present are actually aware of that. And also, sometime this year, there are residents, I believe, of Lukosi village who petitioned the government about the upstream of like pollution happening from the upstream of Deka, I believe, Deka River. So usually, from my understanding, any petition from residents usually goes through a member of parliament, so so that it's presented to the government. So that's again the question that I had for our members of parliament who are present here, if they are actually aware of this petition that was filed this year. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Simba. Anybody who has a comment? We seem to be running out of time. Donald, you want to say something?
It was brought out in this discussion, the issue concerning our local leadership. I think we are having a big challenge there. We can't, as residents, talk critical issues like the very one that we're having today without the voice of our local leadership. It goes back to these challenges where we will end up having no one to represent us. We are fortunate today because we have our 3 MPs from the 3 constituencies, but it was going to be a noble thing to have the Hwange RDC and the DA's office being present in this discussion, so that at least they have a feel of what the people are saying and then respond accordingly to the reactions. The fact that we don't have them here, it leaves the community in the dark. We don't know what they're saying out there, and we will end up having no one to resort to in issues to do with community development and the other issues to do with community engagement. That's my comment for today.
Okay, thank you very much, Donald. I see there's Elizabeth. The hand is up. Elizabeth, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sibangani, Mr. Dube. Thank you so much for this. May I commend you on this forum for providing this opportunity for the residents of Hwange and concerned individuals relating to this issue of mining in Hwange National Park. I just wanted to kind of give you a perspective with regards to the tourism sector within Hwange National Park and in the surrounding areas. I'm a stakeholder as well as a representative of the stakeholders, and we hosted a similar forum on Zoom on the 3rd of September. I'll be very brief in my remarks, but what I just wanted to highlight to you is a lot of the concerns you've raised, we've also been discussing. So we have that in common, and that's why I'm here, and I know some of our other stakeholders from the tourism industry are here on this Zoom platform with you. We had on our forum representatives from government offices, as well as from we had our Chief Nekatambe represented on the Zoom meeting. You know, I'm certain if he's not here today, he was not able to connect. But I will say that there was a tremendous amount of passion and support from the Chief with regards to this matter. As stakeholders and operators in the tourism sector, we collectively determined that these special mining grants that were issued you know, for mining purposes within Hwange National Park were issued without consultation of any of the stakeholders that were on our Zoom meeting. And we had 100 attendees. We actually could not take any other attendees. So of all 100 of us, there were none of us who were adequately consulted for purposes of these special mining grants. We also realized through our discussion that the only person really who has the power to reverse these is the president of Zimbabwe, President Mnangagwa. So what our position has been is that we were going to prepare a statement. We've run out of time, but we prepared a statement which has been presented today to the president. Our hope is that he will respond to our statement, which is essentially asking for a reversal of these special mining grants. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Sibangani. I know that we've run out of time.
Glad that this issue has not been allowed to lie to rest, that right now the whole community of Hwange and the international world is basically up in arms about the granting of the mining area. And as people are making these submissions about the whole thing, I'm asking myself a question. Had the Zimbabwean economy been functional, had people been having access to their bank accounts, had people been having access to their pension, because if you look at other countries like South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, they do have a very resilient economy which can allow people to get, you know, their pension, their insurance savings, and so on and so on. If Zimbabwean economy was functional, that even old people, retired ministers can actually go and retire and earn their monthly pension, their 1,500 as senior citizens, including the other benefits they get from their savings and so on, will we still put our investment, our environment at risk the way we are doing right now? And perhaps does this not provide an opportunity to talk to government and say, government, can you please put back the economic fundamentals that can guarantee everybody a life, that can guarantee everybody access to health services, quality health services, quality education, so that we don't put our environment at risk the way we are doing right now? Yes, because even if people get that money, but where does that money go to? Who is taking that money? Who is benefiting that money? Because like we said earlier, I don't want to believe that the locals are getting anything, even from the current mining activities going on along the Hwange Road. Last time we heard that there are about 7 mining activities taking place within a 60-kilometer stretch, which is basically a disaster on its own, right? That said, I would like to invite members of this platform to kindly share with us their comments, their views. You can share in the chat box. And I'm recording this interview, this discussion, by the way, so that we can make it available to relevant authorities, including the chiefs who are not here. We're going to send these recordings to them. Thank you. Anybody? To mine or not to mine? Yes, please. Can anybody with a question or comment? Maybe Elizabeth, do you want to continue with your comment? I saw you were pushed by time to sort of cut short your presentation. Maybe you want to go ahead and complete or share with us what you have done so far. It's interesting that already some action is being done. Yes, Elizabeth, go ahead.
Thank you, Sibangani. So I think, you know, really we have really looked at this challenge, this issue that we're facing. From a tourism perspective, we've also looked at the impact it will have on environment, as well as, you know, we've got ancestral sites, we've got, you know, the impact on human health in our communities, not to mention the livelihoods that would be lost, so the social economic impact. But you've all said you've really addressed all of these issues quite eloquently on this forum already. You know, the thing that really strikes me, I think I just want to refer to, I think his name was Peterson, his point that was made, because I know a lot of what we've been focusing on has been the issue surrounding the impact on wildlife and the environment. There is indeed a tremendous impact as a result of these mining activities on humans, and we need to focus more on that. And I think, you know, as someone coming from the tourism perspective, we need to look for ways to integrate more with community on these joint efforts, so that, you know, if we had addressed this collectively a long time back, I know you've all been fighting this fight for a long time, you know, in terms of environmental impact on community and that sort of thing, for many, many months, for maybe years. But if we had joined our efforts long back, maybe this whole discussion or this whole you know, issue we're facing with regards to the impact on Hwange National Park wouldn't even be on the table. Because, you know, there would be a clear message, universal message from all of us saying this is not acceptable. We cannot allow mining to supersede the value of human life. And there was a statistic that was shared recently during our Zoom meeting, and that was that, you know, the impact of this potentially will increase the amount of human-wildlife conflict. And so please, I just want to emphasize to Peterson, your points that were made, you know, it's important to us as well. Although we are advocates for conservation, for wildlife, we also care very much about our communities. As we face this devastating imposition of mining in Hwange National Park, I can assure you that all of the community projects that our safari operators carry out will be completely vanished. You will not have safari operators putting boreholes at schools, as I did at Dampa Secondary School. You will not have our safari operators conducting educational programs. You will not have, you know, a lot of these things that are happening as a result of collective efforts. And then someone mentioned earlier the Transfrontier you know, agreements. I mean, there's so many implications. Now, the thing I just want to highlight is that we're talking about 2 Chinese mining companies that we are aware of. And you're right, Bejani Trust did find them in the process of establishing themselves for mining purposes within Hwange National Park. Those are the 2 we know about. We don't know who else has a special mining grant for this national park. We don't know about other national parks. So I think, you know, we as a, you know, safari, you know, tourism group within Hwange area are saying, yes, we want to address this Hwange National Park issue. And we've taken a stance of addressing this directly with the president, because if anyone can reverse it, he should be able to do that. And so we are appealing to him. As the listening president, as we've been told, he's the listening president, we're appealing to him to hear us and to hear our voice and say, please reverse this. But at the same time, collectively, we need to be looking at how do we address this issue as a nation and ensure that our national parks are protected for our children, for, you know, for future generations. I mean, this evening I was watching a herd of elephants coming in, and after that, a herd of buffaloes, you know. And it's as if though they are being pushed already out of Hwange National Park because of Chinese operations. That's really what I'm envisioning. And you know, so they're being pushed onto, I'm on the outskirts of Hwange National Park, just on the border, right? So now imagine when they go into our communities, what will happen? Human-wildlife conflict. And already this year, we have more deaths. And you know, one of our colleagues who's on this Zoom platform stated this very well. You know, we have more deaths this year than we had last year already. And we are not even through our year due to human-wildlife conflict. Sibangani, I'm going to turn it back over to you because I could really talk a lot about this issue. I think we're all very passionate and very, you know, very bewildered by the outcome of what we are facing here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Simba's hand is up. Simba, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Dube. Yes, I agree with what Elizabeth is saying, because actually one person here on this panel mentioned that their tomatoes, I believe they're a tomato farmer, their tomatoes recently got trampled by a herd of cattle. And so the person was actually, you know, asking who would compensate, you know, for the lost tomatoes through the elephant invasion. So I actually want to appeal to, you know, to Honorable Dube, Honorable Molokeli, and Honorable Sansole, you know, to actually go on the ground and talk to the residents in their communities, because not everyone has the opportunity to come online or on these Zoom meetings and speak, you know, by all means, you know, attract them to come forward with any devastating, you know, effects of these wildlife and human conflict that has been happening to them of late, so that maybe they can build up a case and make, you know, their appeal even stronger. Because I believe the conflict, the wildlife human conflict, as Elizabeth has put it, is already existing. You know, is resulting from the mining activities being done by the Chinese. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Simba. Our MPs are here, they are hearing some of these things, and if any honorable wants to make a comment or submission, And while you are there, Simba, perhaps I also want to find out from our honorable MPs, as we talk about this whole thing of human-wildlife conflict, which is currently going on, it is historic that the communities living around Hwange National Park, for as far as I know, they don't get any benefits because they are suffering a double tragedy, actually. Number one, when their crops are about to tassel or ready for harvest, the elephants pounce, and then, or if it is cattle, the cattle are actually being devoured by lions. In your parliamentary discussions, do you perhaps sometimes talk about an act that provides for the compensation, full compensation of those people around Hwange, the stretch of Hwange, and I want to believe these people are being made poor every day, but at the same time, they're not deriving any benefits from the proceeds of the national park. And I also want to believe that I was looking at the management and senior management, including the board of Zim Parks. It is very sad that until today, we don't have a single representative of anybody from Hwange community to represent Hwange's interest, despite it contributing to the biggest national parks. We are saying this because these things are adding on, this mining thing is adding on to the issues around that. And I think maybe Mr. Mzembe can also help us. How do we get senior management representative in all these bodies, including Hwange Colliery perhaps, and all these other bodies where the locals have no voice? We are talking about leadership, yes, but even at corporate level, there is no representatives. That's why some of these guys, they can hide and do whatever they want to do. That said, I have Renius Magumula. Magumula, please unmute your mic. And yes.
I also want to come in, Swangani.
Oh, you want
okay,
to come
thank
in?
you.
Okay, I'll come to you now, Mr. Otete. I'll come to you, don't worry. You'll be second in line. Let's start with Renius Magumula.
Thank you, Swangani. There is an issue of human-wildlife conflict that I got so clearly. I've got a suggestion here. It's happening in Botswana. Why can't we come with a compensation fund? And then from a community point of view, people agree to say, if your livestock, for example, is devoured by a lion within this boundary, you receive you receive compensation, or if it is this period. When it comes to human life, really there has to be, some people have lost their parents, their breadwinners. I think we have got a solution. And then the other issue, on the opposite of a conflict, there could be a benefit. I think Mr. Mzembe put it clearly that what the communities are not realizing is the benefit of wildlife at the moment. Probably as communities, why don't we sit down and say, how to enhance that benefit from wildlife? The benefits are immense. I can take hours and hours talking about them, but maybe at community level, let's identify how best we can benefit. We can come up with the hunting zones for communities. Say Lukosi, it becomes a hunting zone, and whatever is hunted in the Lukosi area, that man is going to the Lukosi community. Because sometimes you have an animal that is hunted in Lukosi and they bear the brand of elephants, but probably the benefits of that hunt is shared throughout the local, the whole RRTC, even with someone who has got no problem with elephants. So I think we need to refine our the way we approach wildlife utilization in communities and even in surrounding areas. I think I'll end there.
Thank you, Mr. Renius. Mr. Otete, I'm sure you wanted to come on board. Are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, cool. That's good. Please go ahead, Mr. Otete.
Thank you, Spangani. First and foremost, I would like to commend Elizabeth, I think, and her group for the approach which they took to actually engage the highest office in the land. Because I think if I know, I remember well, the Mining Act, Mines and Minerals Act, as it is today, actually supersedes all other acts. So we need to start from that. I think it's due for review, and during the review, maybe we can all contribute towards some of those issues. Secondly, the identification of a potential mining area is done by the person who is looking for the resource, and then submits their papers to the Ministry of Mines and to the Mining Affairs Board, which then approves. The stakeholders only play a part during the EIA process. That's where the stakeholders are then involved. But in this case, I would like to believe that since the two SGs are in the parks, the major stakeholder there was national parks as the custodians of all national parks areas. Yes, the people that have got lodges and so forth within that area should have been consulted, but maybe there was an oversight in that regard. But that's how it works. Those Chinese are actually carrying an exploration EIA certificate just to do the exploration, which would have been approved or issued after the main stakeholder, which is national parks, did not seem to be bothered about that exploration or agreed to that exploration. So at times it's important that we understand the processes from the beginning right up to the end. But at this stage, I think the approach of engaging the office of the president is the best approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Utete, for that intervention. But also, my investigation over this issue was that the Ministry of Heritage, I'm not sure if the Heritage Ministry is still available, when this idea was first mooted in 2013, somewhere there, they were told not to touch that area at all. And why someone is all of a sudden opening that area, it's very questionable. Right, but I also have some comments here. Not only the effects affecting the ecosystem, human-wildlife conflict. Imagine the health.
Hwange.
Yes.
Can I just help you? Sorry to budge you there.
Yes.
Actually, those two SGs were initially granted to ZMDC way back more than 10, 15 years ago. And ZMDC has now gone into partnership with ZZEE to develop the two SGs for the provision of coal to ZZEE power station that is being constructed just after the Kasibo turnoff. So those SGs have actually been there for the past 15 to 20 years, but belonging to ZMDC.
Okay, thank you very much. There's a comment here, not only the effects affecting the ecosystem, that is human-wildlife conflict. Imagine the health hazards, drought, about mining and around the community, the pneumoconiosis. No one is compensated for that too. Does campfire compensate those who had their crops? Doesn't campfire compensate those who have lost their crops or destroyed by wildlife? Yes, those are some of the comments I'm getting. Perhaps our honorable members and other experts on this platform can also answer to that. Anybody with a comment or question, please? You can type in your question or you can just unmute your mic and have the floor. Anybody? If not, maybe I can go back to Mr. Mzembi. Perhaps you have a comment or so based on the comments and submissions which have been made so far by by members of on the floor. If yes, you can just unmute your mic and make the comment. Please, yes, please.
Yes, I just wanted to say that the due processes outlined by Patrick Utete, and I think and some historical information is submitted by somebody just now on ZMDC is actually correct. But really it's a function of the vision of a government, whether they want to advance mining interests in that park ahead of biodiversity and tourism. And that's where it ends. And that's why lobbying the highest office where that vision is residing to say opportunity cost-wise, I think I would rather mine the national park than leverage biodiversity and tourism. It is essentially in that office. That way, that's where that contradiction or decision may be made or revised or revisited. So rightfully so, as you build up your lobby towards a greater understanding of the review, ultimately the decision to revise it will rest with the person who issues special grants, and that is the president. But what is in context here is his vision for the area, whether he sees the value extraction is being speedily done through mining ahead of what has been the status quo to date. So they are correct in that regard in terms of due process. Yeah, so it's a very difficult question. There was somebody who was getting a bit political, I think, about following the government of the day. I think the debate here is an environmental impact assessment being done to the satisfaction and consultations generously and democratically done to the satisfaction of local communities. They appear obviously surprised by, if you measure their reaction to this whole matter, the presence of investors on the ground appear to surprise local communities, appear to surprise local stakeholders, appear to surprise the tourism sector itself. And it is really the essence, I think, of this discussion was the due process followed sufficiently enough, consultations done widely enough to extract the participation of communities or the understanding that yes, well, we may proceed, we may, subject to successful exploration, we may proceed with mining ahead of what you are doing now as economic activity. So I also want to disabuse him that even my presence on this platform is purely from a scholarly point of view. My doctoral research on conservation management was done in the Hwange area, supported by the Zimbabwe parks. I was there I actually took leave of absence from government work to go and do scholarly work inside Hwange. And I'm very happy to share my findings as a scholar, what the communities were saying vis-a-vis this subject today. If I'm provided a link, I would want to share my 500-page document, what it says as a scholar. I also want to say that having been Minister of Tourism for 10 years, for a decade, I have a legacy in that area, in Hwange and Victoria Falls, that I jealously guard, not just in this discussion, but regionally and internationally. I'm a member right now of the African Tourism Board, and I don't miss a day to promote Zimbabwe, notwithstanding my political challenges with the administration there, because it is my legacy, and I have no interest in actually seeing my legacy reversed out of ignorance or perhaps out of oversight. or commission or omission. So we are together in this one, and there's no politics here. It's economics, it's common sense, it's communities at the center of everything. And I will happily share my academic work. Actually, I have it here. I can share it with you, and you benefit from what communities were saying inside the Hwange area in a more collected way. Thank you very much.
Thank you a lot, Mr. Dr. Mzembi. How do we access you? The question is, how do we access you, Doctor, so that we can have further engagements with you off Zoom sessions?
I've shared my number with Father Stanislaus Lumano. He asked for it.
Okay.
So you can those who have an interest in further communication.
All right.
You can get my number from there and my email.
Okay, thanks so much.
Yeah, but I'm happy to assist purely from a scholarly and academic point of view, and also from a practitioner. You can't throw away my networks and experience. It will help you make informed decisions, and I'm happy to share that.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for that. I do have some comments which are coming through. There should be, okay, this one responds to the question around the compensation that compensation issues by CONFIRE. It doesn't cover that. Then there's a comment that there should be an alignment when it comes to social media. For those of us who don't hold any efforts, I suggest efforts need to be use the same hashtag, Save Hwange National Park. I think Save Hwange National Park is the way to go. There's a comment again, why are we making so much noise about SGs in the parks and nothing about one in Dinde communal area? Harare should know that there are people who live in Hwange. They must be allowed to speak for themselves. Harare is not capacitated to speak for Hwange because it has always fired blanks, prioritizing pecuniary interest only. And then someone is saying, can you put the number and email here? I think there's a suggestion for Dr. Mzembi to do so. I'm not sure if he's comfortable to put his number here, or is rather check with the name that he mentioned. All right. I think, ladies and gentlemen, we have looked at issues very exhaustively. We don't want to dilute our conversation. We want to make sure that it remains as hot as possible. I'm sure we have managed to touch all angles, and I'm sure the real work starts from now. What do we do? I think we are very clear. We have been given a lot of perspectives about that. And having said that, I want to give our esteemed guests at least 1 minute each just to round off before we call it a day. I know Farai is still around. I'm sure Honorable Dube is still around. I'm not sure about Sansole, but Mr. Farai, just a 1 minute conclusion before we call it a day. This has been one of the longest discussion that we have ever had so far on Hwange Hard Talk. Yes, Farai, do you want to say something? Honorable Dube, I think Molokele is not here anymore. Perhaps he left, or the internet is very bad. Yes, proposal on the way forward. I think we covered quite a number of issues. The way forward, yes, we covered a number of issues. We have done the recordings. I'll be sharing them on our links there. I think the way forward has been very clear about what do we need to do. Yes. Any word from our guests? Farai, Honorable Due, Honorable Molokele, anybody? Anybody?
Svanga?
Yes,
I will share 2 additional documents for this forum.
Okay, great.
You can share it with participants.
All right.
The first one is a paper I authored just after we lost 120 elephants in the Hwange National Park. So it was a motivational paper to the United Nations World Tourism Organization on zero tolerance to poaching by year 2020. And it then sponsored the international study, which was done and participated into by about 45 African countries on measuring the economic value of wildlife to African national tourism economies. I think if you read it together with your current discussion, it will assist a great deal. So I'll also share that one as well.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mzembe. I think we'll definitely want to get that intervention from a knowledge also, especially the scholarly element is very critical as we delve deeper into this, right? Yes, there's a comment again here from a non-partisan investment consulted forum. Form a non-partisan investment forum comprising chiefs, sons, and daughters of Hwange and those with serious interest. The forum must be allowed to engage all investors to come to invest in Hwange and agree on how the parties are going to coexist. Yes, very much agreed on that. Yes, we need to have that collective. We need to speak with one voice. The very same way, I think this is very important. Yes, Honorable Dube, I think you are ready to say something. Please go ahead. In conclusion.
Thanks, Dube. I mean, do you hear me?
Yes, very well. Yes, Honorable Dube, I can hear you very well.
All right. Thanks a lot. I mean,
your line is very bad.
Discussion, I mean, has been great, and are you hearing me now?
Yes, very well. Yes. Yes, we can hear you very well. Yes.
All right. Thanks, my brother. I mean, we have really, I mean, lent participants and the Dr. Mzembe and that. But all in all, what I can say at the end is that, I mean, this is Zimbabwe's national heritage, our people, our wildlife, our environment. It does not belong to the Chinese or anyone else for that matter. It belongs to the people of Zimbabwe. So we have to do everything that we can and do what is right at the proper time. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Honorable Due. We have about 4 minutes before we come to the end of this session. Perhaps I should take this opportunity. If there's nobody with a burning comment or question, I do have a comment here from Elizabeth. Please share any new developments relating to special grants with us using this email address, info@explorehwange.com. Info@explorehwange.com. So definitely we are going to get in touch with you, Elizabeth, because this approach needs a collective approach. We all need to point our arrows in one direction. Roderick, give you 1 minute. Roderick, yes, Roderick, the floor is yours, please. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much and for having us as Zimbabwe Environmental Law Association. So with regards to the proceedings and some of the actions that we are doing, liaising with the community in Hwange, we are going also to be giving feedback through our mailing list and also on our social media platforms, both on Facebook and Twitter. If you follow us on Twitter at Zela Info, you will find some of the deliberations and the issues as they unfold. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Roderick, for that contribution. Let me take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you who to really come on this platform to share our concerns, to share our cries out there that we need to do everything we can to protect Hwange National Park and keep it as pure and clean as much as possible. Yes, we do have other issues that have been running for many years or which are actually coming up. we will take all those issues. We need to take those issues one by one and make sure that our voices, our concerns are addressed by the relevant offices and stakeholders. And also I want to thank a number of people who really contributed to the spreading of this message across the divide of our geographical boundaries to make sure that we have a historic attendance on this Zoom platform. As Hwange Community, we are very much aware that for many years we have been disadvantaged towards communicating with each other, not to each other, but with each other. Hwange is very complex. We have got Hwange Central, Hwange East, Hwange West, and we have got a lot of things that happen in Hwange, which makes us to be to find ourselves in a fix most of the time. And we are glad that for the first time in many years, the advent of technology gives us that leverage of actually communicating and reaching out. And I would like also to thank especially our guests this evening who really graced us by sharing with us their insights, their expertise. Particular mention goes to Dr. Mzembe, who really took his time to come and share with us. We are very grateful. And to all of you, have a pleasant evening, and may the good Lord richly, richly bless you all. The work has just begun. Thank you.